Hello, welcome to Date Night with Martina. This is episode number 14, and the topic for tonight is bringing more to sex. So, before I moved into a little bit about tonight's topic, just to say for those people who don't know me, I'm Martina Hughes. I've been working as a love, intimacy, and relationship mentor for the last 15 years. And I'm passionate about offering this work because I see a lot of people in pain, struggle, discomfort in their lives because they're not experiencing the quality of love, intimacy, and relationship that they would desire. At the heart of all my work is the relationship to ourselves. So, whether you're single or in a relationship, there's something in this for you. Because until we work on our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with a partner will always be limited. So, we do both elements of the work, like looking at relationship with self and relationship with a partner. And I've certainly had profound and deeply transformational experiences in my own self journey, as well as incredibly profound shared experiences in my relationship journey with Rod. And Rod and I do some of this work together. In fact, this afternoon we've been working on a little project which I'm not going to say what it is just yet, but keep watching and we'll be announcing something new very soon. But yeah, we've been working on that this afternoon, so it's very exciting. I love the feeling of community that's created through this Facebook Live space over the last 14 episodes of doing this. It feels like there's a lot of people like Danny and Karen who have been regulars at my events over the last couple of years. There's some people that I have been long-term clients but I don't see as regularly who I know show up on these. And then there's also new clients or new people who are interested in the work, like Carlo, who's just said he's looking forward to this. So, to support that feeling of community and to give me a little bit of encouragement along the way, please do drop your comments into the chat box. I love hearing from you, and it's a great way for each other to feel in the community that there are other people interested and involved in this work, and also to just hear different perspectives on the things I'm sharing. So if you like what I'm sharing, you can type that into the chat box. If you're confused about what I'm sharing, then type that into the chat box. If you don't agree with me, you can also pop that in there. But if you'd like to say hello and share with me a little of how you're feeling tonight to get started, I would love to hear from you. For me, I feel a little bit excited, a little bit nervous, also a little bit tired. I've been doing some extra exercise recently and the exercise feels really good, but I'm also aware that, yeah, my energy levels have dropped a little bit overall. I do have an ongoing issue with iron, and sometimes I need to get iron infusions. So I'm just waiting on some blood tests at the moment to see if I need another iron infusion. So perhaps that will reverse the tiredness that I'm experiencing at the moment as well. So the topic for tonight, bringing more to your sexual experiences, both solo and partnered experiences. The reason I wanted to address this topic is that it's quite common, particularly in women, that I hear this belief that I'm not interested in sex. I'm just not into it. My libido's low. It's just not that important anymore. And over the last 15 years of working with people in this space, what I've noticed is that often that I'm not interested in sex or it's just because my libido is low. What often sits underneath that is that the person is not enjoying the type of sex they've been having. They don't know how to say that. They don't know how to ask for anything different. They might not even realize that something different is possible. So quite often there's a giving up on sex because people haven't experienced the depth and the quality of sex that they want to experience. And so oftentimes women in particular come to a certain age and go, oh yeah, it's menopause. I just don't care anymore about sex. Or people go, you know what, we've been together for the last 10 years. Sex doesn't matter so much anymore. We can forget about it. But sadly, in that case, what's happening is the person or people involved are giving up on some of their own innate life force, some of their own capacity for opening and feeling. Most people that I've worked with, once I dig a little bit with them, just beyond those surface layers, when I dig a little bit into how they feel, what they might be interested in sexually, most people can acknowledge that there is a desire for more. Sometimes it's that they want more connection, more slowing down, to feel more depth in the connection, to feel more pleasure, to feel more letting go, more surrendering, more responsiveness from their partner. They might want to feel more aliveness or a different type of touch, but they simply don't know how to ask for it. And so if you relate to that feeling of wanting more, whether it's more sex or more variety or more depth, more pleasure, more responsiveness, perhaps just type into the chat box and share with me, yeah, I'd like something more. That'd be cool to hear from you. It seems like either the connections are slow tonight or people are quiet and not in the mood for responding so much. What we might do is go into a meditation to get started, because as I said, the relationship with self is at the core of the work that I do. And so it's that capacity to go inside, to feel and connect with our own bodies. It's that's at the heart of feeling more connection, more intimacy, more pleasure. So the meditation helps us connect more deeply with the inside of ourselves. So just closing your eyes, place one hand on your heart, and the other hand you can place on your lower belly, or you can use it to cup your genitals, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then closing your eyes, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathing out through the mouth creates a deeper opening in the body. It helps to open up our energetic channels. It also helps with releasing any tension stored in the body. So if you struggle with making a sound on your out breath, just allow, even if it's a feeble sound, allow that. If your exhale has more gusto, allow that. If it's somewhere in between, allow that. And as you inhale, expanding right through the lungs and the ribs, feel your ribs expand side, front and back to feel your lungs more deeply. And letting go with your exhale. You might notice as you inhale the diaphragm that sits underneath the lungs, the diaphragm moves downward and creates pressure through the abdominals and down into the pelvic floor. So a deep inhale has the possibility of awakening the energy in your genitals. Feeling right down through the lungs, through the belly, and down into the pelvic floor, into the genitals. Releasing any tension in your body. Expanding your capacity to open, to feel, to be connected to the sensations inside of you. As you breathe in, what sensations do you feel in your heart? As you breathe in, what sensations do you feel in your belly? As you breathe in, what sensations do you feel in your genitals? Tuning into your body with each inhale and letting go with the exhale. Releasing the breath, releasing your hands, having a wriggle, and opening your eyes. And perhaps type into the chat box what you noticed, if you felt anything different. I'm just going to plug my headphones in. I realized during the meditation I didn't have them in, and I know it's a better quality of sound for you when I do have them in. I also have a little scratching sound behind me. Hades is up here. I don't know if you can see him clearly, but he's just jumped up here and he's playing with a feather that I had sitting up here. He's clearly in a little bit of a frisky mood right now, so I'll leave him to play with the feather. And excellent. Thanks for the feedback, Jackie. I'm glad it sounds better, and sorry that I missed them on the beginning. And so I noticed that Carlo has a comment here. I prefer company rather than solo. I am going to address your comment very soon, Carlo. That's in fact the first point on my list. Karen says she feels more relaxed and connected to herself. Jackie says, hee, hey, Hades. Yes, these cats of mine are mischief. Panna's just joined him now. I'm going to move because you don't often get to see Panna. But here she is. She wants to play with the feather too. Okay, back to Facebook Live. Jackie says, I feel so much better. Danny says, present, aware, enlivened. Awesome, awesome. I'm glad that you can feel the difference after that very short practice. It might have been 4 minutes of just paying attention to our breath, to our body, and I certainly feel more deeply present and connected to this experience and sharing with all of you. So the way I'm going to structure it tonight is that we're going to talk about the role of solo pleasure in having enhanced partner pleasure, because it does make a difference. And then what does it look like to have a different experience? And that is both solo and partnered. And then how can you open up the kind of conversation that you might wish to have with a partner about this? So first of all, how does a solo pleasure practice benefit your sexual experiences with a partner? So in order to be truly responsive, receptive, tuned in, capable of feeling our partner's energy, we need to be able to tune in and feel our own energy. So if I look at it, first of all, from a man's perspective, a man who hasn't tuned in to his own capacity for feeling, sensitivity and receptivity, a man who is missing those qualities in himself, is much more likely when he's with a partner to go into the mode of trying to do his partner and very much be focused on the outcome, very much be focused on the results and the end point. So a man who doesn't have that kind of sensitivity, receptivity and feeling capacity in his own body will often be, let's say, not as sensitive as a lover, because it's harder for him to read his partner's body. There'll be more challenge for him in feeling the subtle nuances of sensation in his penis, in his heart, in his body. He'll be more looking for the big and the explosive feelings. He'll be looking for that kind of more outward, explosive kind of orgasmic feeling, rather than being able to feel the pleasure that comes from being deeply connected. Now, in order for a man to truly be able to read and feel and be sensitive to where his partner's at, he needs to understand his own sensitivity. He needs to understand his own body. And I'll share a little bit of Rod's experience when we first got together. I think I may have spoken about this on a prior episode, but Rod, for those of you who know him, will know he is a bit of an open book, and he would share this if he was here, which is why I feel comfortable to share a little of his experience. There were times when Rod and I were first together when I might touch his body, might touch his arm, his torso, and there'd be a part inside of him that was like, when's she going to get to the good bits? When's she going to get to the good bits? When's she going to touch my penis? Because he, like a lot of men, he felt sensation at the head of his penis, but felt very little in the rest of his body. And it was actually through doing the 42-day self-pleasure practice that was in the training program back then, was during that self-pleasure practice that he started to tune in to the sensitivity in his body. He started to recognize how much pleasure was possible, and that was via a self-pleasure practice. And what that self-pleasure practice gave him was a much wider range of feelings, sensitivity, receptivity, enjoyment and pleasure in his body, but it also made him much more aware of reading my body in a whole lot more detail. So it then took us both into a much deeper partner experience. It's impossible to take somebody somewhere unless you've been there yourself. So by Rod opening to more of his own capacity for pleasure, for tuning into more pleasure, not just in the head of his penis, but the shaft of his penis and the rest of his body, by feeling that higher level of pleasure in his body, it meant then he could support me to open even more deeply. Equally, as a woman, through my relationship to pleasure, through understanding the nuances of pleasure and how that moves in my body, I'm also much more able to tune in to pleasure in a man's body, to know the times when I can move a little faster, to know when to move a little slower, when to touch a man a little stronger, when to, shift the movements in my vagina to meet where the man is at in that moment. But if I'm not connected to my body, then my capacity to tune into all of that in a man is quite limited. My experience is that the people who are the greatest lovers are the ones who have a healthy relationship to their own bodies and their own self-pleasure. Because when you have a healthy relationship to self-pleasure, you're not dependent on your partner for gratification. You're not dependent on your partner to make you feel good. There's a sense of knowing and claiming that in your own body. And for all the ways when I was young and having a variety of sexual experiences, but not very tuned into my body and not very tuned into men's bodies, there was much more a mechanical quality to it. And it very much felt like there was something missing. There was that, yeah, it works, there's pleasure, there's some sense of validation and gratification, but the depth in it was limited. We're getting a little bit of a Hades grumpy stare over my shoulder. He's about to settle down and go to sleep now. So the depth was limited because I wasn't connecting to the fact that pleasure starts in my body. There was that part of me that was always looking to see, what's he going to do? Will he touch me in the right ways? Will my body respond to him? Will he enjoy being with me? What's he going to think of this? Is he having a good time? Perhaps if he has a good time, then I'll have a good time. A lot of it was mental. A lot of it was looking for the external gratification and validation. But when I really understood the depth of pleasure that is possible through my body, and then instead of coming into a sexual experience as the beggar, like, what am I going to get from you? Like, expecting that the other person knows the right thing to do, how to do it, when to do it. Instead of coming into a sexual experience as a beggar, when I have a healthy relationship with self-pleasure, I know my body better. I'm more tuned in to my feelings, my sensitivity, my receptivity, my awareness, my capacity to read another. Then I come into the sexual experience like a queen. I'm not looking to get something from you. Now, knowing my relationship with pleasure, I'm coming into the sexual experience because I have something to offer. And I'm alive to how pleasure moves and feels in my body. How many people struggle with your relationship to pleasure? Perhaps you'd like to say in the chat box how your relationship is to pleasure. Is it easy? Is it challenging? Is it kind of mixed or a bit hit and miss? A lot of the things that make our self-pleasure better are the same things that make our shared sexual experiences better. So the first thing I wanted to speak to was giving up striving for an outcome or being results oriented. Because if you're in a sexual experience, whether it's solo or partnered, if you're in a sexual experience waiting to get to the end, waiting for the outcome, waiting for the orgasm, waiting for the peak parts, you're missing out on all the possibility of feeling pleasure and sensitivity and receptivity along the way. There'll be a lot of tension in the body when you're striving. There's a lot of often a mental observation going on when you're results and outcome oriented. Whereas when you're present to your body, to your breath, to sensations, to pleasure inside of you, then you're simply enjoying this moment and this moment and this moment and this moment. And when you can enjoy each moment and be really present with each moment exactly as it is, there's nothing to rush, there's nothing to strive for, there's nothing to change, there's nothing to be tense and uptight about. You can relax and feel the beauty in each moment, feel the sweetness in each moment. And in that's the space in which people start to go much more deeply into their inward journey to feeling more. Karen says she's working on it. Danny says it's been challenging in the past, but self-pleasure practices have definitely opened my body up to feeling much more. Beautiful, beautiful, Danny. And yeah, it's a constant work in progress, because I know for me as a woman in my 20s, I would be aware of feeling a man's penis inside of me and what the penis felt like, but I wasn't tuned in to the sensations in my vaginal walls. I wasn't tuned in to sensations in my cervix. Most women don't even know it's possible to have sensations and feelings in their cervix. Most women are very reliant on their clitoris for their sole source of pleasure and stimulation. But when we learn to relax, to let go of striving for the body, in a sense, to be like, oh, then pleasure is possible in every part of the body. Like I've had orgasms here, I've had orgasms here, I've had orgasms in my breast, I've had orgasms in my arm, I've had orgasms in every part of my body, and that's been like focused, localized in specific areas. But then I've also had whole body orgasms and energetic orgasms traveling through the whole body. And it's only through really being present and alive inside of me that I've been able to feel those things. If I'm waiting for somebody to give me an orgasm, if I'm waiting for somebody to make an orgasm happen, or if I'm waiting thinking I need my partner to touch my clitoris just there, and then I need him to thrust this way, and then he might need to go down on me for a little bit, and then I need him to do this thing in this particular fashion at this particular tempo, the window of possibility for me to experience pleasure narrows down. It's like this. Whereas being tuned in to what pleasure feels like in my body, Rod could walk up and just touch me lightly like this, and I could have an orgasmic response. He could take me in his arms and I could feel an orgasmic wave move through my body. And what I mean by that is that it's important to start reframing orgasm. Often people think of orgasm as the thing they see in porn, that's the big explosive screaming type of release at the end of a sexual experience in porn. I know it's not but I also didn't want to do the porn star thing. But an orgasmic wave can be it's tuning in and feeling the sensations in the body. It's feeling how those sensations travel, run, move through the body. It's breathing into the sensations as they arrive and noticing how my body receives those sensations, how my body responds. So our relationship to receptivity could be, excuse me, food in my tooth. But let's say I take this blanket here, which is a soft kind of plush fabric. So if I'm looking at my relationship to receptivity, if I touch the blanket, it's like, oh yeah, that's nice. I'm being kind of mechanical, which is the way a lot of people do sex. Oh yeah, that was nice. It was good. Had an orgasm. It's done now. But if I touch the blanket in a way where I feel the softness in my hands, I feel the plushness in my hands, and then I breathe in to the sensations activated in my hands. Then it's like, there's so much more, even through simply touching a blanket. If I take a piece of food that I love, like let's say a nice juicy raspberry, which I don't have, but let's imagine I take a raspberry, I pop a raspberry into my mouth, and I breathe in to the sweet burst of raspberry flavor. I breathe in to the soft squishiness, to the juiciness, to the way the raspberry juice just goes and explodes in my mouth. You can tell I've been present with raspberries a lot because I can give you the replica of the experience of eating a raspberry, because raspberries are my favorite food. But being present to whatever we're doing, whether it is our touch, whether it's taste, whether it's when I'm eye gazing with Rod and I look into his eyes, and so you can see it now, I'm recalling the feeling of looking into Rod's eyes, and I start to smile. And in fact, I can feel the part of me that wants to start tearing up because I can feel my body being moved by that experience of looking into Rod's eyes. But when I look into Rod's eyes, I'm not just saying, oh yeah, this man has brown eyes. When I look into his eyes, I'm looking at his eyes and I'm like, I breathe in the rich, deep, dark brown colour. But beyond the colour, I breathe in the presence of him. I breathe in the sensitivity of him. I breathe in the depth of him. So I'm not just looking into his eyes, but I'm feeling Rod through the eye gaze. And so it's this quality of receptivity. It's like breathing somebody in. And so if I'm self-pleasuring, it's the same thing. And if I do it now with just one hand touching the other hand, I love hands, by the way. Hands are amazing. If we imagine throughout our whole life, all the things we do with our hands, from touching ourselves, touching loved ones, eating food, picking things up, putting things down, um, driving cars. Anyway, I love hands. So in terms of touching my hand and being tuned in a receptive way, so as I'm touching, you'll notice my right hand is the active hand, my left hand is the passive hand. As I'm touching, I'm breathing in and feeling the movement, feeling the pressure, the energy of my right hand, and I'm feeling my left hand receiving the right hand. And as I breathe into my hands, as I breathe into these sensations, then my whole body starts to respond a little, because as I'm truly receptive, truly engaging with the feelings in my hands, my heart starts to open and respond. I notice my hips and my pelvis start to rock a little. My back starts to undulate a little. I'm breathing in the feeling of touching my own hands, and I'm discovering pleasure in this kind of touch. And even now that I've stopped, there's still a sense of a buzz moving through my body. I can feel a little buzz, a bit of a flow from the pleasure, the tingling, the sensations, just of my own hands touching each other. So if that's possible through simply being present with my hands, breathing, tuning in to receptivity, not having any outcome or results focused orientation. If that's possible through my hands, what else could be possible? Self-pleasure is not just about our genitals. The way most people do self-pleasure is that for women, it's the fast and furious kind of stimulation of the clitoris. For men, it will be some kind of fast and furious stimulation of the penis. There might be fantasies that cycle through as part of the visual reel. There might be porn used, but it's very, very rare that self-pleasure includes feelings, sensation, receptivity, and aliveness through the whole body. So when I'm talking about self-pleasure here, and I did do a prior one of these on self-pleasure, but when I'm talking about self-pleasure here, I'm talking about a quality of receptivity that goes beyond the standard, I'm going to be crude, goes beyond the standard wank. I'm talking about a quality of self-pleasure that opens up the question of what more is possible? What more could I feel? And oftentimes, what people are looking for and actually I kind of wish I'd spoken about this in the sexual desire episodes a couple of weeks back, but often people are waiting for the I'm so horny, I have to have sex now feeling, or before they masturbate, or before they touch their own body, or before they engage with their partner. Now, those kind of like, oh, I'm so horny, I have to have sex right now, those experiences become more and more rare as time goes on. And what I mean by that is that those experiences can be common at the beginning of a relationship, they can be common when you're young, but over a certain age, when hormones start changing and adjusting, the feelings of being like, oh my God, I'm so horny, I have to have sex now, those feelings aren't as common. And so this is what I'm realizing about people's relationship to sexual desire, is that sexual desire is missing because people are waiting for the magic moment of I'm so horny and it's all hot and heavy and intense and I have to have sex right now. And if you wait for that feeling, a lot of people end up waiting a long time. And sex can actually be more pleasurable, more connected, more fulfilling, more meaningful, have more pleasure, depth, intimacy when we're not feeling the hot, heavy, intense, I have to have sex now type urgency. Don't get me wrong, there's a place for that, and there are times when that comes online for me, and you know, the urgency and the hotness and the intensity of sex is there and it's beautiful, but that's not an every week kind of an experience. For women, there's really only 2 days out of the month where that kind of experience really presents in a hormonal way. And for men, as men's testosterone decreases, and it starts to drop off pretty rapidly for men from 30 onwards. Like men's testosterone is at its peak from like probably 18 to 30, and then after that it starts declining. So some of the intensity for sex, you know, is constantly fading as the years go by. But learning to just be present with relaxation, with presence, with softness and awareness in our bodies can really change things. So for me, let's say if we take it back to self-pleasure for a moment, I could be lying in bed and take some time just to breathe and massage and caress and love my breasts. And then as I'm caressing and massaging and loving my breasts, I might start to notice, my body's relaxing. My body's responding. Okay, now my vagina's responding. And then I might start feeling more desire, more openness, more of the sexual longing coming online. It's important for women to touch their own breasts before they go to their vulva or their vagina. It's also important for men to touch a woman's breasts and open her at the heart and the breast before going to her vagina. Women warm up through our breasts and our heart. So being loved here is a good starting point. Some women find that their breasts become less sensitive, but this sensitivity in the breasts can be restored. It just takes some time for the woman to really get present to her breath, to slow down, to give up any sense of needing the response to look a certain way. So going back to what a different experience looks like. So first of all, I said the different experiences, giving up the outcomes, giving up striving, giving up waiting for that I'm so horny and that kind of urgent intensity. It's like releasing that. Also, releasing your ideas at a mental level about what works and what doesn't work. Because often what we think works mentally is very different to what the body actually responds to. And this is where we can use self-pleasure to be curious, to explore, to learn more about our bodies, and actually, possibly be surprised that our bandwidth for pleasure is even wider than we might have imagined. Equally, when you're with a partner, giving up your ideas of what you think your partner will like, or what you think is going to do the trick, or what is going to support your partner to open, and be a little experimental. Instead of going with what the mind thinks is right, touch in different ways, explore in different ways, be curious about your partner's body in ways that you might not have been curious before. I had another point on the no outcomes and no striving that I wanted to cover off, and that is that oftentimes what happens in sex is that, and when I say sex here, I'm speaking about a partnered experience, is that a man will be going, I must make her have an orgasm. I must make her have an orgasm. I'll do the same things I did last week and move this way and move that way, and I'll give her an orgasm. And that kind of pressure, I must give her an orgasm, actually narrows the energetic experience possible. It narrows the depth, it narrows the level of connection, and keeps things quite limited. Whereas when a man touches his partner, connects with her, makes love with her in such a way that he's just feeling into her and going, I wonder, I wonder what would happen if I touched her like this. I wonder how her body responds to that. Can I read her sensitivity if I touch her breast in this kind of way? If I squeeze her tightly, how's her body going to respond? So being curious about your partner's response gives you a much wider capacity. Firstly, as a man, it gives you that wider capacity to read and feel, what is she responding to? What is it that's really happening in her body? And then instead of chasing her pleasure down and making the experience more narrow and shallow, you create a wider space by being curious and simply noticing, like, oh, her body responds when I touch it this way. Oh, closes down when I touch it that way. Or if I thrust in this particular fashion, she seems to disconnect a bit. But if I thrust with more rhythm or more slowness, oh, now her body responds and opens. So tuning in to a deeper level for men, noticing the woman's pleasure, and women offering a man your sounds. The more a woman offers her sounds of pleasure, which is why I always teach people to breathe out through their mouth and make a sound. Because when we become familiar with breathing out through the mouth and making a sound, we're training our bodies to be able to we're training our bodies to be able to reflect pleasure back to our partner. If a woman is not offering her sounds of pleasure to her partner, it's a little bit like he's hunting in the dark. He doesn't know where to go. Whereas when he hears, like when I'm with Rod and he hears my sounds of pleasure, then his body has a very clear map for whether to move faster, whether to move slower, whether to stay the same, whether to thrust more deeply or to thrust more shallow, or just hold presence in exactly the same spot. So that breath and that sound gives a lot of clues. Also for women, women can be waiting for a man's pleasure response, and in the process leaving her own pleasure behind. In some ways, a woman's body is the gateway. A woman's body is the pathway to pleasure, the pathway to a deeper opening. So let's say if a woman is giving a man oral sex, and while she's giving him oral sex, she's in her mind going, I wonder if this is good for him. I wonder if he's enjoying it. I wonder if this is okay. Is he having enough pleasure? Is it okay for him? If a woman's in that mode and she's waiting and asking those questions, she's going to be disconnected from her body. But a woman can give oral sex to a man in such a way that if she's present in her heart, in her belly, in her vagina, present in her mouth, her lips, her tongue, a woman can start to experience pleasure in her mouth, pleasure in her throat, pleasure in her heart, pleasure that flows through her own body. So I could be giving Rod oral sex and experiencing orgasm in my own body at the same time, because of being present to my pleasure starting here. If I make Rod responsible for my pleasure, I limit the amount of pleasure that's possible for both of us. But when I tune in and embrace the enormous capacity for pleasure that my womanly body has, then it's like I open a doorway for both of us to feel a whole lot more. Let me know if this is making sense. Let me know if it's confusing. Let me know if it's blowing your mind or anything else. I can see I have a couple of messages, so I'm just going to check and see if there are questions relating to what we're talking about. No. Okay, cool. They are not related to what we're talking about. Okay, so I've mentioned breathing a number of times. Breathing is essential to feeling. If you're not breathing, you're not feeling. Now, a lot of people go, oh, but I breathe all the time. Of course I'm breathing. What I'm talking about is a deeper quality of breath. The more deeply we breathe, the more fully we feel. So as I said during the meditation at the beginning, a deep breath where we really expand our ribs, our lungs, release the diaphragm, breathe through the abdominal muscles and down into the pelvic floor, that starts to activate sensations in the genitals, so that that full breath starts to open up sensitivity in the body. Mel just took her first breath today. Well done, Mel. Well done. I have been encouraging you to breathe for a couple of years, so I'm glad you started today. Beautiful to hear, and I'm glad it's making sense, Mel. Thank you. So the more fully we breathe, the more fully we feel. Most people just breathe quite shallow here in the top part of the lungs, which is enough breath to survive, but not enough breath to thrive. And so we need full, deep, thriving breaths in order to feel sensations in our body, in order to really feel the depth of what's possible internally. So if Rod and I are making love and let's say he's touching me, and he could just touch my back like this, which he does a lot, and I will start to undulate. My body will start to pulse with pleasure because of how much I love that feeling of him touching my body. And it can be light, gentle caresses up and down my back. And that's enough to activate the responsiveness in my body because I'm breathing in the feeling of his touch. It's not just a surface touch, but I'm fully breathing it in, and he brings his masculine presence to the way that he touches. He brings a certain quality of presence, clarity, and stillness that has my body expand and respond much more fully. So, based on everything I've shared so far, I just want to sum up a couple of things. We know that it's not about the waiting for I'm so horny. It's not about pushing for outcomes. It's not about being in our mind trying to chase our partner's pleasure. What it is about is breathing more fully, learning to feel the sensitivity, receptivity, and capacity of your own body. Then the next thing, it's about slowing down. And together with slowing down is the idea that less is more. Often when people's bodies are desensitized, and on a sexual level, many people experience desensitization due to sexual shame, due to sexual abuse, due to, unhealthy or negative early sexual experiences. So a lot of people carry sexual shame, many more people than you would imagine. And sexual shame causes many people to be desensitized in their body, to not feel the way sexual energy moves. So then when people's bodies are desensitized, people start thinking they need more friction, more movement, more thrusting, more wildness, more passion, more extreme, more variety, more partners, more whatever of the extreme variety. But in actual fact, for sensitivity and really deep feeling to open, less is more. So less is more. Less is more. I'm saying it a few times because it's often a really challenging one to truly sink in for people. But if you were to walk away from tonight with just 3 things, I would say to remember: breathe more fully, slow down, and less is more. And so what I mean by less is more, if there's a lot of activity happening, like let's say if 2 people are really busy with their hands and they're busy trying to touch each other's body and being fast and lots of activity, then it can build up a lot of heat and a lot of friction and a lot of energy. But it doesn't necessarily correlate to connection. It doesn't correlate to intimacy and feeling each other. Intimacy and feeling each other happens more by slowing down and doing less. And this is why Rod and I have an eye gazing practice. And for those of you who were present when I was sharing about eye gazing with Rod, you will see even without Rod present in the room, even me talking about eye gazing with Rod has an effect on my body, because it's something that we do regularly, not every day, but almost every day. We have an eye gazing practice, and it's 10 minutes where we breathe and we look into each other's eyes. And so during that time, there's a really beautiful, magical synchronizing of our energies, me softening into my feminine qualities and feeling the love flowing through my body, feeling my responsiveness, feeling myself reflecting back to Rod. And in Rod, there's that beautiful masculine qualities of clarity, stillness, presence, and penetration. And I feel all of that coming towards me. And so the eye gazing is something that is very much about slowing down. It's very much about less is more. We're not touching each other, but we're both feeling a lot. We both feel enormously connected, hugely nourished and fulfilled by that level of connection. So that it means the eye gazing every day gives us a baseline of connection in our relationship. So then when it does come time to be intimate, when there is that sense of wanting to connect sexually, instead of our baseline being down here, we have a baseline that's here because of the daily eye gazing. And so there's a sense of being attuned to each other's bodies, having a sense of where each other is at. I've also noticed since having the regular eye gazing practice, we're both a lot more vulnerable in sharing regularly with each other how we feel, what we're processing, and we're also much more likely to name things immediately when they arise, rather than waiting until one of us is, upset or having a blow up about something. So that's another benefit of the eye gazing practice. So then when it does come time for us to connect with each other sexually, then we could lie in bed and just hold each other. And in the holding each other, instead of like moving towards sex, because it's often that energy, that agenda of we have to have sex now, it's time for sex now. That agenda is, again, it's often what creates a narrowing and a contraction around the experience. But just by lying in bed, holding each other, we might chat a little, we might breathe a little, we might look into each other's eyes. But holding each other gives both our bodies this opportunity to drop into that deeper kind of attunement and calibration of really feeling each other. And so as that's happening, I start to feel tension melting away in my body. I feel the tension melting away in Rod's body. And there's much more sexual energy available in an open and relaxed body than in a tense body. People often talk about sexual tension, but sexual tension will take you very fast to the peaks of sex, but then you'll also drop really quickly. And part of what I'm talking about here with slowing down is not racing towards those peaks, because as soon as you hit the peak, bang, you're going to crash. And often hitting those sexual peaks and then crashing also leads to some emotional crashes in relationships. And what I mean by emotional crashes is that racing towards a sexual peak and then having the sexual, the energy dissipating immediately. Often one or both partners will feel that sense of something's missing. I'm not fulfilled. I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to feel more pleasure, more intimacy. I wanted to enjoy the journey a little bit more even. And so when that happens and there's been the peak and the crash, it can be quite common that leads to an emotional crash that will leak out over the coming days, where one or both partners might feel out of sorts with each other and not realize why they're out of sorts. But on some level, it's because there's some incomplete sexual energy in the body. Okay, so we're about an hour in, and I'm probably about halfway through the topic outline that I have for tonight. So I'm just going to check my notes. How are people going? I'd love to hear from you. It's a really, really quiet crew watching tonight. But if you have any comments, any questions, please do let me know. So in the slowing down, feeling each other's bodies and really relaxing into the experience, then more energy can move. So if we look at a garden hose, for example, if I was to take a garden hose and have a kink in it, the water can't move through. Sexual energy is quite similar to water. So with that kink in it, there's tension in the hose, the water doesn't move through. When the hose is unkinked, the hose is relaxed, more energy, more water moves through. So that's what I mean by the reference to not having as much tension, not and actually more sexual energy moving in a relaxed body. Okay, let's read a couple of comments. Mel says, as always, you have this way of encouraging me to bring my energy back to myself, quieten the noise, tentacles by my side. I have been totally out of sorts today. Love you, beautiful woman, and love the daily eye gazing for the baseline connection. Might have come in handy before our blow up this morning. So maybe you can now implement some daily eye gazing, Mel. It could be yeah, really beautiful practice and avoid some of those blow ups. Yael says awesome and really juicy topics, heaps to digest in that hour. Gail, thoroughly mesmerized as always. Love. Peter, aha, minimize kink. Definitely less tension goes a long way. Well, I'm glad it's hitting the spot for people. What I might do is kind of wind up shortly, because I feel like there is a point where I kind of come to a bit of saturation in the sharing. I also feel, as Yael said, like there's heaps to digest. I think there's a point where you need to be able to go away and digest, and then I can revisit this topic again next week, because each time I do one of these, I go and sit down afterwards and eat my dinner and go, oh, I could have spoken about this and this and this. So there's always more. It's definitely one of the feminine qualities of there's always more. So in the experience of slowing down, less tension in the body, more relaxation, more connection between the two of you, one of the things that can be important, well, actually not can be, is very important, is to tune into what creates the full yes in a woman's body. Because if a woman experiences penetration before she is a full yes, one of the things that can happen is that her vagina goes numb. Now there's actually a good reason for the vagina going numb. I haven't given birth to a child, but I know many women who are watching have given birth to children. And when women give birth to a child, there's all sorts of nerve endings internally for a woman that are designed to go numb during childbirth to ease up some of the pain of childbirth. And so when a woman experiences penetration before she's fully ready, then it's quite common that her vagina will go numb. And I know this has been a really breakthrough piece of information for a lot of women, because a lot of women judge themselves for their vagina being numb, judge themselves for not having feelings and receptivity in their vagina. But it comes back to the fact that if a woman experiences penetration, whether it's her own finger, partner's finger, vibrator, dildo, a penis, any form of penetration that happens before a woman is a full yes and a full opening for the sexual experience, then will cause the vagina to activate the nerve endings that cause the numbness. So a lot of times when women start to understand this, then they can just delay penetration. There's nothing wrong with the woman. She simply needs more foreplay. She needs to slow down. She needs her heart and her breast touched more. She needs her whole body touched more. You know, the entire area of our skin has the possibility for orgasm. It's our bodies and our skin are highly, highly responsive. So if a woman's vagina is not ready, then it's space for a man to explore, to be creative, to see how he might touch her, to support her to open more fully. Hades is coming in. I think he is looking for a foot to play with. Hopefully I have my feet tucked under my legs enough that he won't attack me right now. Hades, are you coming in to say hello to everyone? No, he's hiding his grumpy face, but he'll give you his tail. So how you can know if a woman's vagina is ready for penetration, and everyone is different because everybody's genitals are different, but some of the common things you might notice is that the lips of the vulva stand up a little more fully. You might notice lubrication at the vulva and at the vaginal opening. You might notice that the lips become a little bit more pink or reddish in color. So there's that kind of like sense, almost that the lips become, you know, they become a little more erect and full of blood. And that's a sign that the woman is aroused and feeling stimulated there. Some women have less lubrication, some women have more lubrication. So for men, if you're with a woman who has less lubrication, but she feels that she is ready and available for sex, then what you can do is actually just use some lube. There are some amazing lubes on the market. We sell a CBD lube that's a really beautiful product. But yeah, I find that on the days when I feel aroused and I'm lubricated internally, but that hasn't reached the vaginal opening, just to use some lube at the vaginal opening and make that initial entry a little bit smoother. Because any sense of if the entry feels like a jolt or a shock, that'll create tension and uptightness in my body. And a lot of women override their feelings and override that place where the vagina is not fully yes, where the vagina is not fully open and ready for penetration in that moment. So I think I'm going to wind up on that note. It's been an hour and a quarter. It feels like we've covered a lot tonight. What we haven't covered is some of the more detail and nuances around penetration, using the breath during penetration, also different aspects of reading and feeling each other's bodies during penetration, also how to have conversations about all of this with your partner. So we'll save those two parts for next week. Yeah, that'll be Wednesday, 22nd of July. I will be back here to share much more with you on this topic about how to bring more to your sexual experience. And just going back to the analogy I used earlier, remembering that it's about bringing more, not demanding more, not expecting more, bringing more. So you bring your whole heart, you bring your voice, you bring your sex, you bring your love, you bring your energy, your passion. And it's in that that we're truly generous as lovers. And in being really generous as lovers, we create space for each other to open up much more fully. So, yeah, it's been beautiful to share with you all tonight. It's good night from me, and good night from Hades the grumpy cat, and good night from little Panna over here, little sweet lovable cat. And yeah, it's been a delight to share with you. If you have any questions related to tonight, do send them through to me during the week if you'd prefer to be anonymous, and I can address them during next week's episode. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Sean. And yeah, thank you, everyone else. I will see you next week. Good night.